Okay, guys, so here we are. We're back in Photoshop. And as I mentioned to you before, I really wanted to take a look at the layer palette. So before we open any images, let's just take a quick look here and see what we have to look at. So every image, I don't care if it's a new image or if it's something that you open up, will start out as a single layer in Photoshop, unless it's an actual layered Photoshop image, I should mention. And it'll start out called background. That's the name of the layer. It has an eyeball on it, and that eyeball you can't turn on or off when all you have is the background. And it's got this little lock on it, okay? And it's a partial lock. And you see everything's grayed out, so it's not the greatest layer to start out with. And I think it's only partially locked because they want you to edit it, maybe. It's one of those things that I've never quite understood. It allows me to paint on the layer, but it does not allow me to move the layer. It tells me I can't do it because it's locked. So, to understand it maybe a little bit better, let's go ahead and let's make a new layer. And again, you can do that by clicking on this icon to the left of the trash can on the bottom of the layer palette. And now I can turn the the eyeball of the background layer off. And this is what we call a transparent layer. And I'm just going to take our paint tool here. This is one of our, I should call it not our paint tool, our brush tool, and our paintbrush tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to scribble on this just a little bit. Maybe in a different color though, maybe that blue. Makes it a little bit easier to see. So this is called the thumbnail, just like in Illustrator. The eyeball toggles visibility, and this is the name of the layer. We can double click right on the name of the layer, and we can give it a name. So mine's going to be Demo Squiggle. It should be somewhat descriptive of what we have. Up here, we have locks. And we have this, and this is normal, and we have opacity, and we have fill. So locks, let's talk about them, because they're easy to understand. So there's a bunch of locks. So this first one here is a transparent pixel lock, which means just this. So if I click on that, that means I lock all the pixels here that are transparent, which essentially is everything with the exception of that blue squiggle, which means this. Watch, I'm going to go ahead and change to green, and I'll take my paintbrush, and I will go ahead and I will paint a little bit in there. And look, I'm clicking. It does not whatsoever affect the empty pixels. It only affects the pixels where there was actually something painted. So now I'll flip back to blue and do it again. And so that's pretty cool because, again, this is a game of layers. And this is also a game of selections when you're working in Photoshop. And if you can go ahead and you can isolate everything but the thing that you want to like recolor, for example, or just edit independently, that makes life a lot easier. So that's the transparent pixel lock. So I'll click on that and then it unlocks. I'll click on this next one, this lock image pixels. Now that basically means that I can't edit any pixels. I can't make new ones. I can't modify them, whether they be transparent or whether they be actual pixels. I can't do anything. What I can do though is I can use a move tool, and that's this first tool that I'd like to talk about on the toolbar. So in the top left of the toolbar, we have the move tool and the artboard tool. The move tool is essentially the selection tool from Illustrator, and it allows us to click and to move objects around. Okay? And what I can do is, I can move objects off screen or off the artboard or just move it around in the artboard. It's a really simple tool. And when I have that pixel lock on, I can't do anything but move stuff. I'm going to unlock that. I'm going to click this next one here, which is the position lock. Now I go to move it and I can't lock it because the layer is locked. And that is essentially what the background lock is. I'd like you to notice that every time we make one of these locks, we have this partially locked padlock right here on our layer palette. So that means that while I can't move anything, I still can paint or edit or make any kind of modifications to the layer that I want. I just can't move it around. Okay. Next we have auto nesting into and out of artboards. That is brand new to Creative Cloud. So if you have CS6 or 5, you are not even going to see that. So what is that exactly? Prevent auto nesting into and out of artboards. So essentially what we have is we have these things in Creative Cloud called artboards in Photoshop. It's kind of like artboards in Illustrator with the multiple page thing, but it's different. And I probably won't get into that in this class. I will get to that in graphic arts too. If you're interested, you can take that online, or you can take that in the classroom. But so we're going to skip that for right now. And last but not least is this large padlock that just says lock all. And if I click on that, then I can't move it. Then I can't do any kind of painting or modification. See how you get that like slash through a circle that just basically says no. So that means everything's locked. So that is what those things are, the layer locks. Now we have normal, opacity, and fill. Let's talk about opacity and fill first. So opacity works just like it did in Illustrator. The opacity slider here in Photoshop is like, one of the famous things of Photoshop. And essentially it's pretty cool because we can make things see-through or translucent. And it works a lot better if we have something underneath it. Like, let's say, this white background, right? Now let's go ahead and start to bring this opacity down, and you can see you can start to see through the object, which is pretty cool, right? Now, fill does something very similar, but it's not the same. And I'm going to explain what fill does better in a future video, so keep an eye out. I'd like to point out, though, that one of the things that we can do in Photoshop that we can't do in Illustrator is anytime you see a word, right, like opacity, and we know that it's got a slider attached to it, I can go ahead and I can roll my mouse right over the word, and it gives me a little slider. So I can go back and forth, and this is called scrubby sliding. This is something that you'll find very useful in Adobe. Okay, and it's only a Photoshop thing. They don't have this in Illustrator. So, yeah, check that out, scrubby sliding. And last but not least, we have this thing that says normal. This is called the blending mode, and there's a bunch of them here. And I will get into them a little bit this semester and more in graphics too. And I really want to have pictures to get into those. But those right there, guys, those are the basics of the layer palette. The layer palette also allows us to search for layers via names or like maybe the effects or the colors that we have on there. It also allows us to just filter pixel layers, okay? Or maybe layers that only have adjustments on it, or only have text on it, or shapes, things along those lines, or maybe just smart objects. And essentially what these things are these are different kinds of layers that we can utilize in Photoshop, some which we will get to this semester and some where we don't get into until graphics 2. When we come back, we're going to open up an image and we're going to modify, we're going to play around with some layers in there as well. All right, cool. Thank you.